Hi, my name is Greg. I'm an atheist. I post as GKLR, and this is a video reply to Mooeypoo with respect to tautologies and how they apply to atheist arguments. And first off, what are tautologies? Secondly, how they apply to atheist arguments. Okay, so what is a tautology? Well, we started getting into this in comments, and I blew it because I had my kids trying to get out. We wanted to get outdoors, and I was just typing away some answers here before I finally got out the door with them. So I was really being pushed, and I really blew it. When I said that 1 + 1 = 2 isn't a tautology, of course I was wrong. I mean, quite obviously it's a tautology. But what I meant is that it's not meaningless rhetoric. So what's being described as tautology is meaningless. If you go to Wikipedia and you look up tautology, then this is what you're going to find: two definitions: what it means in propositional logic and what it means just in simple rhetoric, which is what I meant by argument form when I was talking to you in comments. So by argument form, I mean in rhetorical form. A tautology really isn't the way we want to go in terms of presenting something new to somebody. I mean, just by saying to them A = A, well, that's hardly an argument that's of value to them in that way. So what you were saying was it really doesn't lead us anywhere to talk about things. Well, it depends on because there's a lot of angles we could look at this here. For example, the opposite of a tautologist truth is a contradiction. P or not P. P or not P at the same time is always true for P, and no matter what the P is, no matter what the proposition is, P or not P at the same time is true. P and not P at the same time is a contradiction. Can never be true. So when we apply this to Bible, showing Bible contradictions, and stuff like this, is very important for atheists to understand what a contradiction is and how it works. So a formal contradiction is P and not P at the same time, which is using and instead of or. That's the logical difference between a tautologist truth and a contradiction. Tautologist truth is P or not P, and a contradiction is P and not P. So P or not P is true for every P, every possible proposition. It's true, independent of the facts. In other words, all elephants are green or all elephants are not green. Independent of the facts, that statement is true. Independent of what color elephants are. You could be colorblind and we don't have any eyes at all and be able to identify that as true because of logic. So it's logically true versus what's scientifically true. And when we can talk to the theists, remember, a great deal of their argument relies on, you need to search the truth. You need to go, God's truth, and they have all these terminologies for truth, but really it's important for them to seek out the truth, and that's what they'll tell you to do. And you'll be able to tell them what truth is in a more concise way than anything that they can learn from the Bible. So you can talk about empirical truths. It's found through the 5 senses. This is what we discover the physical world. We invent tautologist truths in our mind. We invent languages, words, letters, and alphabets. None of them are physical. They don't have a physical location. There's no coordinates for the letter A any more than there's coordinates for the letter Q. We don't have the melting point of the object truth. So these are, even science itself is a word that's not identifiable scientifically. It's identifiable only through logic. Okay, so there is no such thing as the physical object science that science can weigh or put in a test tube or melt or whatever. It's a word. It's an abstract concept that we use to describe something, and it's only found through tautologies. In other words, if truth shows something to exist, this is another premise that I'm using, is that a truth about an object proves that object exists. Well, we have empirical truths to prove physical objects exist, and we have tautologist truths to prove abstract objects exist. It's like science or truth, or the word existence, or the word reality. What does that mean? Well, it only means what we've defined it to mean. We've created it and said it means and given definition and meaning to all that noise. An example of this would be if I was just to present to you this whole text in Chinese. Unless you have a systemic understanding of that language, then we couldn't process that information and know that information. So I'm saying that truth is language dependent. We have to be able to understand what the proposition is first to be able to tell whether or not it's true or false. We couldn't understand it unless we had a language to begin with. And the way we understand language to exist is through tautologist truth about them, not empirical truths. We don't have any empirical truths for language, but we know language exists, so how? We know numbers exist, so how? We don't have scientific, like the number 1 is not straighter than the number 2, because those are symbols. And when I say the number 1 or say the number 2, those are also symbols. The sound is not the number 1, and that squiggly line is not the number 2. Those are physical symbols. Those are empirical things. The sound is empirical, the symbol is empirical, but it refers to an object which has no physical existence. The number 1, the number 2, any word, any language, any meaning, any definition, any proposition. Now we have, those are all logical objects. They're found through reason and analysis. They don't exist outside of our mind. So that's the why tautologies are important to atheists. It leads us directly to the contradictions, to a form of truth statement that apparently the religious aren't going to be too familiar with. It's not in their texts. This is something that has been an advancement through philosophy, through thousands of years after the fact of their texts, so they couldn't possibly know it. You might see other people talking about Kant, and he's got a priori truths, which I believe have simply been updated by Wittgenstein. They talk about tautologist truths after Wittgenstein. For students that got to Kant and never got to Wittgenstein, well, they'll talk about a priori truths and essentially talk about the same things. The real distinction is the influx of morality with an a priori. There is none with a tautology. So I think it explains the world far better, explains logic better, and existence of objects better than anything that the Bible is going to provide to us. We have empirical truth and tautologist truth, and they have some magical eternal truth. So leaves us to be a little bit more authoritative, and rightfully so. In other words, we can give examples, countless examples, of all of science and all of logic. I also like to say how all that we can say true is either scientific or logical. So there's no real reason to include anything else. So, but without the logical aspect of that angle worked out, then I think that atheists are too frequently left saying, well, if I can't see it or touch it, it doesn't exist. Well, I want them to tell me what the number 79 feels like, or what the number -79 feels like, or sounds like, or tastes like, because that would be an interesting idea. So the way we do talk about these objects' existence is through tautologist truth, not through empirical truth. There's a great deal of meaning there for atheists. Yes, we invent them as a species, though. We don't just simply personally invent numbers. Okay?